informed us that his government will repeal the ISA. It remains to be seen whether he will carry this through. It also remains to be seen whether the laws that they propose to replace the ISA with will be fair and just and will protect the liberty of the individuals who are being made subject to those laws. But the truth is, we face so many other draconian laws that the mere removal of the ISA does not restore the liberty back to the citizen. Now, I can tell you so of the many other laws that need to be repealed. The Official Secrets Act, Printing, Press and Publications Act, the Sedition Act, the emergency ordinances will probably also go with the ISA. But there's just so many. There's so many laws that need to be repealed. Now, what MCLM is doing now is we have put together a legal team to draft the necessary repeal bills. The reason is this. Now, we are hoping to see a new non-BN government in Putrajaya post the 13GE. And what we don't want to be faced with is this. A new government that says, yes, the new Attorney General's chambers is looking into those laws and drafting the necessary bills. 1 year later, we'll probably hear the same thing, that the laws are still being drafted. Now, to avoid this situation, our legal team will have all the bills ready. And should we successfully establish a new non-PN government in Putrajaya post 13GE, we expect that government in the first sitting of Parliament to have all these bills that have already been drafted, tabled, debated and passed, so that by the close of the first sitting of the new Parliament post 13GE, this country ought to be free of the OSA, the PPPA, the ISA, the Sedition Act. All of those laws should no longer be on our statute books. That is the third reform that MCLM is proposing. Now, let me illustrate the fourth reform with a scenario I want to depict. Let us say we are now in a post-13GE situation. The Rakyat have succeeded in removing Barisan Nasional from Putrajaya. We have a new government installed in Putrajaya. And this new government has, as promised we hope, has already moved to establish the RCI, Royal Commission of Inquiry, to look into the Malaysia Agreement of 1963 and the 18-point, 20-point agreement. Let us also imagine that this new government is also moving to put in place the social inclusion agenda. Now, imagine further, UMNO Barisan Nasional, not wanting to relinquish and to let go, now takes applications to the courts, our courts, to injunct the new RCI. Takes applications to court to declare the social inclusion agenda unconstitutional. We have a serious problem because the judiciary would still be very much packed and manned by individuals beholden to the old regime. Now, this is a situation we do not want to face. And this brings me to the fourth reform that MCLM is proposing. Restoring the institutions of state that were intended to protect the Rakyat back to the Rakyat. And I will start with, say, as an instance and as an example, a focus on the judiciary. Now, what we need post the 13GE in order to see this reform through, the restoration of institutions of state back to the Rakyat, is a brave Prime Minister. A Prime Minister who is reform-minded, who will focus his attentions in his 5-year term on reforms and not to consolidate his position with a view to re-election during a 14GE. He must be prepared to take radical moves. He must be prepared to take unpopular decisions because he is committed to the reforms that the Rakyat want. Let's go back to the judiciary. This is what MCLM expects of that new brave Prime Minister. The morning he takes and assumes office, we would want him to summon the Chief Justice and to ask the Chief Justice, whoever he is then, I think it is Arifin Zakaria now, to summon him to the Prime Minister's office and to demand his resignation within 24 hours. Also to demand the resignation of a whole host of other judges who we can identify with a measure of certainty as being men and women who are beholden to UMNO and the previous powers that were. Now, if those judges will not resign, to then move His Majesty to summon a special sitting of Parliament, the Dewan Rakyat and the Dewan Negara sitting together can move motions to remove these judges. Now, once these judges are removed, your question, of course, is who do we now fill the courts with? My suggestion, the suggestion of MCLM is really quite simple. The Bar Council proposes 100 names. That list of 100 names then goes before the EGM of the Bar. 13,000 lawyers to whittle that list down from 100 to 50. That list now goes back to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister cannot add or subtract. He takes that list to His Majesty and says, the Rakyat has spoken, please appoint these new judges. And people, in the space of 1 week, we would have restored the judiciary, hopefully back to the Rakyat. In the same way, the Attorney General, Gani Patael, if he's still sitting when the 13GE is over, is to be summoned to the office of the Prime Minister to say, resign, or tomorrow you are going to face a plethora of charges. The Election Commission is to resign and are to be filled with men and women of integrity who will begin to make the necessary changes to our electoral system. The whole host of other, the police force, the IGP must go. We must have a new IGP. Now, in this way, MCLM proposes that the new Prime Minister has to look at all of these institutions of state, have the courage to remove the men and women now who fill these institutions and who for so long have not served the Rakyat but served political masters. MCLM feels that this is the shortest route by which we can restore the institutions back to the Rakyat. This is our final, the fourth reform that we propose in our Rakyat Reform Agenda. MCLM will shortly be writing to all the non-DN parties to present this four-pillar Rakyat Reform Agenda and to seek their consideration, first of the same, and second, to pledge to the Rakyat that if we throw our weight behind them, we the Rakyat, the third force, and I emphasize this, the third force are the Rakyat who have stepped forward now. You know, the ones we saw on the 9th of July in the Bersih rally, that's the third force. Now, we want to know if the non-DN parties will pledge to implement this four-pillar Rakyat Reform Agenda. And if they will, to say so, and if we have that pledge, we will then come out in full force in the run-up to the 13GE, whenever that is. We will throw our weight behind them. Now, MCLM is convinced that the four-pillar reform agenda that we have proposed is the absolute minimum, that we need to see to begin the rehabilitation of this country, to begin to transform this nation, and most importantly, to begin to uplift the lives of the 40% anak-anak bangsa Malaysia who have for so long been marginalized. We believe in MCLM that collectively we, the Rakyat of this country, can begin to deliver this nation, can begin to restore this nation to the greatness it once saw, and most importantly, to begin to be fair to the rest of our brothers and sisters in this country.